Hello and welcome to Brave Talks. I'm Aidan and I will be your host for this episode. 1 in 7 individuals is neurodivergent, and this brings a wealth of new talent to organisations, helps improve corporate citizenship, and increases revenue potential. Today I am joined by Nat Lykowski, who is proudly neurodivergent and is the parent of an autistic IT professional. Nat enables businesses to see the value in embracing neurodiverse talent to obtain highly skilled and dedicated professionals that may otherwise be overlooked. So grab a cup of tea or your favourite beverage. This is Brave Talks. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to Brave Talks. Today I'm joined by Nat and I'm thrilled. It's going to be a really interesting conversation. It's going to be really good. And again, we're doing a WebEx call, so we're going international, which I'm really excited about. So as always, we kick off with a simple question that can be complicated depending. So who is Nat?
Hi, everybody. Thanks if you're watching from home or in a coffee shop or wherever you might be. I really appreciate you spending a little bit of your time and day with Aiden and myself. My name is Nat Lykowski. I am neurodivergent. Yes, we do exist. I've been honored and blessed to be part of IBM for just about 30 years. And many roles, business transformation, but one of my most honored and humbling roles is to be IBM's Global Neurodiversity Advancement Leader. And we couldn't make that title any longer and still have it fit on the business card. So there you go. Really working to make neurodiversity a commonplace word with no shame and allow everybody to be their true, authentic self, whether in the workplace, whether at home, and just all be a little more human.
So, I mean, it's wonderful to have you here today, and I'm really pleased that we could organise this. You've done so much work on a kind of global scale. How has your own personal kind of neurodiversity kind of contributed to that and shaped how you've become a leader in that space?
Hard question. And I actually want to start with the definition, just in case any of our listeners, the word is new to them. So hopefully it's not, but neurodiversity is basically a concept to respect and accept neurological differences as part of the normal human variation, just like hair color and height. Differences like autism, dyslexia, dyscalculia, things that you may have been born with or acquired over time. And it just enriches this fabric of life. For me, being neurodivergent, and a little backstory there, I was not recognized as neurodivergent until college. And I use recognized, not diagnosed, because this is part of my identity, right? And we don't get diagnosed being a woman or Latino or LGBT. So it's just little lexicon you're going to learn along our journey. But I really thought I was broken. Like, what is wrong with me? And then having that aha moment in college when it was like, oh, this is a thing. It's like finding out you're, left-handed, and that's why you've been struggling this whole time. But for me, being neurodivergent, I think allows me to communicate with empathy. Maybe sometimes too much empathy, but it really enables me to look at things from a different perspective, to try to pause and put myself in the other person's shoes. And since I have experienced that discrimination, I have, experienced, I'm also a parent of a neurodivergent and been hit with um, that sense of pity, like, oh, you have, an autistic son. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, I'm not. He's probably getting me a villa in France. But really trying to get people to embrace things as a different perspective. So, question for you, Aiden, putting you in the hot seat. Do you use an iPhone or an Android?
I'm an iPhone user.
Okay, so am I. Good for you. But if I were to use an Android and my app did not work on your phone, there's nothing wrong. I like to say neurodivergents are running on a different operating system, maybe Linux. So having that neurodivergent skill set allows me to connect with people and be my authentic self. And that usually gives the other person the permission or freedom to feel that they can be their authentic self as well.
And yeah, absolutely, completely agree. So in your travels, in your experience, in your kind of interactions, so what are the kind of common challenges people face in the workplace if they're neurodivergent, and have you seen effective solutions that could really help them?
Yeah, I have. I think a lot of it stems from that sense of unconscious bias, or what do others know about neurodiversity? And I think it's a two-way street, right? Like if you were walking down the street and you got a rock in your shoe, you have to stop and deal with it, right? And for a neurodivergent, that may be fluorescent lights. That might be working in an open workspace where there's so much information coming at you at much that you cannot be a productive worker. Just not having the shame to be able to say, hey, it would be really better for me if I could sit facing the wall or not sit near the kitchenette. From that physical aspect, right? Please don't reheat, fish in the office microwave. Like nobody wants to smell that, right? Got to call the United Nations about that. But sometimes it's more the social aspect, right? Of having social contracts to know that, you know, this having clear definitions of, if somebody's heads down, don't just, jump on them, or understand that if somebody's asking a question, it's not because they're or has a comment. Neurodivergents frequently are called out as rude or interrupt, or all of these things that lead to innovation, but there has to be a two-way street. So having training on neurodiversity acceptance, not awareness. Awareness is passive, right? We want to, we wouldn't have Women's Awareness Day, right? Let's, always compare it to another diversity factor. Um, Neurodivergence seen as an identity and not something to be pitied or shamed, or even have that sense of like inspiration porn. Like, look at us, we hired, 5 neurodivergents. Yeah, like let's not do that. And just talk to us, right? Like, I kind of, joke, and I use this joke a lot and on many of my podcasts, but it's like, if you want to know how you really look in those pants, Aiden, ask a neurodivergent, right? Because we are going to tell you honestly and speak from the heart without that sense of masking. On the other point, having social skills training available for not only neurodivergents, but maybe people who English isn't, they come from a different culture, right? So having training and people meeting in the middle is, I think, what we really need. And just as, like, if we were, at a pub and, I'm left-handed and you're right-handed, and I say, can we switch seats so we don't spill the beer, right? You'll be like, yeah, sure, no problem. And or I need eyeglasses, no problem. I'm an ADHDer, so can I please sit someplace that I can work most effectively? Oh, well, get a doctor's note, it should just be, oh, sure, no problem, just like the others.
I think that's a brilliant way of saying it. It's very much, we're very used to kind of cultural differences. I know that's still a challenge sometimes, but we're very used to it. So you understand a person who's had a background, an upbringing, a regional change, or a verbiage that they use is slightly different, but they mean the same thing. And it's just why we do these conversations, because I actually think it's quite important just to talk about it, to make sure it's demystified and it's not a issue. It's something that we just need to talk about and just say it's okay to be a little bit different and just understand and be understanding, and that kind of uh
Yeah, exactly. To say this like on the spectrum, like
yeah,
just say autistic,
yeah,
right? It's give it power, give it strength. And it's kind of like showing your pronouns, right? When you show you share your pronouns, somebody else shares theirs, and you can build that.
yeah. No, it's exactly right. And how difficult is it to say if somebody wants to sit somewhere that makes them feel comfortable? It's no different to anything else. It's somebody's cold, they wear a jacket. You're not going to criticize them for being cold. So It's no
Correct.
difference.
And you're not going to ask them to go to the doctor and get a letter confirming that they really are cold.
Exactly.
It's
So,
enriching.
and I think this one topic we could talk about all day. I think this is the one area you could just go, it's just not that big a deal, you know, just be aware of it, just be mindful. And I think that's where we are in our journey as a team is moving into that action rather than just that learning or training. It's like, how do you do it on a day-to-day basis and just be okay and
Yeah, and that's actually, we call it the neurodiversity journey at IBM. So it's the three A's. I like things that, line up. And it's awareness, because that's where you start your journey,
yep.
right? Then acceptance, where you're putting that education to use, and then advancement, right? Where you're taking it to the next level of helping neurodivergents to ensure they can advance in their career or whatever their passions might be.
And I think that that leads into a very nice it's a nice segue, I should say, into servant leadership and the principles therein. So, how do you feel that that helps or contributes, like mentoring, coaching, all these different aspects to actually helping organizations embrace that neurodiversity and actually help?
Yeah, so servant leadership, for those that don't know, is leading from behind, not like, being a leader from behind, not being a boss, allowing individuals to learn as they go with you coaching from the back, giving them the freedom to explore and experience the world on their own, and then help learn that it's okay to fail and that it's okay to course correct. And that really is where you help others grow. And I think in sometimes for neurodivergence, now granted, I'm just one neurodivergent, and if you only know one, you should meet some more because we're pretty cool people. Is that a lot of neurodivergents may shut down or feel ashamed or not want to speak up or not have their voices heard. But in that servant leadership model, that is embraced, that's encouraged to say, we want all of your opinions, and then I will give mine at the end. This way, nobody can say, "Oh, what she said." Like, we want to hear those individual voices. I'm also a scoutmaster, so be prepared, and that goes with that alignment too.
That's. I used to be a scoutmaster as well. That's.
So
Yeah, that's a huge part of my childhood. That was into my teens, and yeah, it was good foundation. I felt it was good thing. Um, So I think so far we've talked about, you know, where we as individuals and maybe as leaders can help and contribute. From an organizational perspective, how do you think kind of the wider policies and procedures that have been put in, things like the UN, to support and treat people the same with disabilities or neurodiversity, etc. How do you think that affects the organizations and how they're behaving and changing in their policies and procedures?
yeah, I think you mentioned it just a couple of months ago, which is that CQ factor. CQ being cultural intelligence, right? We have IQ, we have EQ, and now CQ is that cultural intelligence. But I think it's respecting people where they are on this journey of getting from awareness to acceptance, and just saying the words, right? Saying autistic, dyslexic, neurodivergent from a total society to help remove that stigma, to help remove the shame. Personally, I see being neurodivergent closer to, for example, identifying as a member of the LGBT community than, say, somebody with a physical disability. Not that, there's intersectionality between everything, but it's something that you cannot see, right? You could look and see somebody uses a wheelchair, and instantly that sense of empathy, hopefully, is there. But if somebody is thinking differently or acting differently, there can be that hesitation. And having the United Nations or international labor organizations really start to call this out as the next chapter of inclusion in their stories, like we focused on gender and race, and there's still a lot of work to be done in all of the diversity pillars. But to have neurodivergence be another pillar for people to think about, and knowing that we need to do more, right? That, okay, I'm aware. I went on a autism awareness walk. Great. I have the t-shirt. Now what? Right? Do you want autistics on your team? Do you embrace that? Do you let people know that you are neurodivergent friendly? And that is how these conversations are held. You have to build that foundation, that culture of acceptance from that organizational level to then have neurodivergence be able to share what they need or not mask and be their true authentic self. You have to do the housekeeping first.
Absolutely. So you mentioned stigma, and I just want to just kind of swing back that for a second. Um, Obviously, I think we are having more conversations. There are more openness. The international policies, procedures that are making things more visible and more mindful. You see things in the press. You see things on TV shows where they're kind of promoting the diversity that we have. Um, but the stigma topic, there are younger professionals or early professionals that are much more open, and I think that's a fantastic thing. Very
Yeah.
positive for the next generation as we move forward. Things will get better, I hope. Things progress. It always changes, but there's still a stigma for some people that may be masking for a very long time or are concerned about opening up and being transparent. Have you got any advice for those sort of people that might say hide it a little bit?
Yeah, my advice would be to try to find some safe spaces where you could develop that sense of courage. And really proud, IBM, we do have a private safe space Slack channel for neurodivergence, and that is a place that people can come together for peer support. There might be an ally on the outside, and then in these safe spaces, talk and learn about their own sense of who they are and on their neurodivergence. And I think that goes back to the servant leadership where we're learning and empowering others. For me, and I'm going to kind of jump into another quick area, is while that safe space is there for peer support, that is where I can poll and I can get representation from the neurodivergent community. The motto for many diversibility, disability, I'm not going to go, whatever the label you want to use, is nothing about us without us. So if you're doing something for the neurodivergent community, you have to talk to neurodivergents, or at least some of them. Just as if you were do something for the women's community, you can't just talk to men, right? And have that sense of importance of representation. Frequently in the neurodivergent community, it's like, oh, I have a PhD in psychology, and let me tell you what you need. But again, they're not from within that community. And realizing that neurodivergents have a voice, wanting to reach out to speak to the neurodivergents is really, I think, where we need to do the most work. And having people realize that what they saw on TV or what they read in a book, they are still an ally. And yes, I am just one neurodivergent, and there might be others, but having these communities where we can come together and uh, a really great point that is actually happening right now. IBM is looking at redoing their, like checkpoint evaluation tool. And somebody from that project reached out to me to say, we want to include the neurodivergent persona when we design this new tool. Can you get me feedback? And, within 24 hours, I have over 30 responses and people who are volunteering to be part of focus groups, but it's because of that one ally asking and not having neurodivergence or even disability accommodations or digital accessibility be an afterthought. And it's amazing to be seen and heard. And it's 1 in 7, right? So, you think of from the client base, right? If, we have a skills gap, and the under and unemployment rate of neurodivergence globally is horrific. So if we have a skills gap and there's a huge talent pool waiting and ready to help with innovation, why not? Right? It's not a question of why, of what, it's a question of why shouldn't you do this? right? It's just a win-win-win, a corporate citizenship aspect, but an innovation aspect. And not that we want to others, we want to other the neurodivergence, but there are skills out there that can be tapped. And everyone has skills. It's a matter of being in that environment where you can grow and thrive and flourish. And if you're on the call and you think you might be neurodivergent, well, check it out, right? And not everybody can get that medical diagnosis. There are stigmas in trying to get evaluated. And I'm a proponent of self-diagnosis, right? If you think you might be, whatever, like if I said, I'm questioning my gender identity, you don't go to a doctor and take a test with a number 2 pencil, right? It's a matter of conversations and reflection and thought and speaking to others. I don't need to go get, validated that I am a woman and I have a card that, says this. We're all on this planet. And I just ask everyone to take a moment and get educated and think about it.
No, I completely agree. And it's I think we're in an interesting space now because we have these conversations. We see the huge benefits of the neurodiverse community as well. We see people in leadership roles that are being more open and more transparent and saying, "Yes, I am neurodivergent," and it's affected me in this way, but I've this is how I benefit from those amazing things that I have. How do you think organizations can change to support that and celebrate individuals? Because I think this is something we haven't quite got there yet. And it was interesting that you mentioned about the checkpoints, because to me, we have systems in place in every organization I've ever worked in which reward. And I don't neurotypical is
Normalcy.
such it's the wrong term, but you know what I mean. This kind of mid ground almost.
Yeah.
Um, because somebody who's fantastic at talking doesn't mean they know what they're talking about, or if they're open like this and being able to converse, and we reward
Yeah, exactly. If you ask me to like read a book or tie my shoes, I will break into that horrible or try to calculate a tip at a restaurant. I will break into that stress, panic attack kind of thing. And I think of it goes back to communication. Like, God forbid you needed a heart surgeon, right? And you went to meet this surgeon and they don't talk about the weather with you and they don't smile the right way and they don't have this great bedside manner. It's something almost that you would expect, right? You're like, I don't care if they have a good bedside manner or not. What's their positive outcome percentage for doing this surgery? And it's a matter of looking at skills and not matching the skills to the job, right? If you have a receptionist, yes, maybe they need to be bubbly and outgoing and do these things, but if it's an accountant, do they need to be good at math, right? That goes back to the core of this issue. And we actually worked with checkpoints a year ago, maybe a little bit more, to say, can we upload a video of us talking about our accomplishments or things that we did? And they were like, wow, we never thought of that. Yeah, let's do it. So um, just being able to look at things from a different perspective, and we can get so much innovation. And when everybody thinks a little bit differently, and it's up to the organization to do that housekeeping, to prepare the soil. Going to go with my garden motif here, that um, you have to make this fertile ground where it's safe to come out, where it's safe to talk about these things. Last year or so, we started a neurodivergent out executive program. So far, we've had 6 or so executives come forward about and talk honestly and openly through raw storytelling about being bipolar, being dyslexic. And I think once we have this grassroots movement and we have the executives talking, so now we really need to work at that middle ground and, take the time. If you're within IBM, we have our Neurodiversity 101. Get educated and just talk about it. And if you don't know what you don't know. So just ask, right? instead of saying, what accommodation do you need? Show me your medical card. We can just simply say, how can I help you succeed? And just leave
That's
it at that and see where it goes.
That's amazing. And I feel like we could continue talking about this all day and just cover so many other topics. But I think that was a nice way to kind of finish off. And I think it just hit the right point, really. You know, it's a journey. We are still on that journey, but we are doing really well on that journey. And we just need to do a little bit more, I think, is the important message.
Yeah,
Um,
and just not be afraid to start the journey.
Exactly. Actually, just a thought that's popped into my mind. If you had one bit of advice for somebody who might be worried about, this whole stigma topic and coming out and sharing that they feel that they are neurodiverse or they are concerned, I'm sure you've had these sort of questions in the past. What would you give them as a bit of advice?
I would try to say find a coach, find a mentor, find a champion, find somebody who you can talk to. Your voice is important, and we do want to hear it. And it will, make the world so much more open, and amazing. But I also respect that making that decision can be very scary. So, maybe start with a couple of friends and see where it goes.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Nat, and it's been really great to talk to you. And thank you for joining us for another Brain Talks, and hope to see you in the future.